What is going on, guys? This is Heavenly, and you're tuned into B-Boy 45, broadcasting from the Seacrest Studios here in Children's Hospital, Colorado. And it is another special edition of the latest news to keep you in the groove with Maya. Maya, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great too, Maya, but I want you to tell me why you're doing so great today.
Because Tyler Hoechlin is calling in.
Tyler Hoechlin! How are you doing today?
I I am fantastic. I am very, very excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Wonderful. Maya, take it away.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for calling in. I've been wanting to interview you for years, so I can't believe this
Oh,
is happening right now.
oh, great! I'm so excited we can finally make this happen. That's so great. I'm very, very happy to be here.
So my first question for you is what inspired you to become an actor?
Kind of a funny story. So I don't know if you would call this inspiration. I started when I was really young. I was 8 years old when I got into acting classes. And the original reason why I thought this would be a great idea was because I really liked, I played baseball my whole life. So I really loved collecting baseball cards and I really liked video games. My younger brother and I would play all the time. So my mother and father had told me that when I was a baby, they'd put me in commercials. And then apparently I was too much of a mama's boy, that I would cry when they took me on set. So they stopped doing that. But the story kind of got me thinking, like, oh, okay, well, if I could do these commercials, I could make my own money, and then I could buy my baseball cards and my video games whenever I wanted, and I wouldn't have to wait for allowance. So, so my original thinking for why I got into it was so I could buy my own baseball cards and video games. But the reason I've stayed in it is because I was really lucky as a kid to work on some really great projects and work with some really amazing actors and filmmakers. And it just kind of inspired me in this whole world of storytelling and just being able to relate to different people and finding empathy for people in situations that are different than yours was just a really inspiring thing, and that's kind of why I've kept doing it. I love storytelling.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I read that you played baseball before you were an actor.
Yeah.
What lessons from being an athlete have translated to your acting career?
I would say the number one thing is team first. I think that's such a huge thing. I'm really grateful that I played a team sport. Baseball was something that I just fell in love with. So I probably would have ended up going that direction anyway. But just being on a sport that's about the team, I think there's so many lessons that you learn about life and working with others and, sacrificing things for yourself for the benefit of the group and things like that. So it just comes to being on a set. There's so many people. And I think that if you get too caught up in your own thing, it can become a very negative place very quickly. So I think the idea of remembering that it's about the team and we're all working together to achieve a common goal, that's probably the biggest one I take when I work. And then when I'm not working, I think the biggest one is persistence. Especially in baseball, you fail a lot. It's kind of the name of the game, and so that's why we get so excited when we succeed. And I think with acting, there was a lot of that, especially when I was younger. There's a lot of, auditioning and going out for things and being rejected. And you just kind of have to keep going and keep trying. So it's all part of the business. And that was also something that came a lot from baseball.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So you played Derek Hale in Teen Wolf, which is one of my favorite shows.
Nice.
Yeah. What was the most challenging episode to film, and which one was your favorite?
Oh, man. Most challenging. I'm trying to think back to like the coldest, longest night, and we had a lot of them. Um, oh man, the most challenging, I would say, It's fun. The most challenging ones often kind of become the most memorable and favorite ones, just because I think, like anything, when you struggle through something or when things go wrong, they end up kind of making for like the greatest stories and the things that you remember most. So I would say our finales were always challenging just because they were so big. You know, I mean, for our show and for the budget that we had, we did a lot of stunts and a lot of big pieces. So the finales were always, and you also you have to get them done, and you're running out of time. You only have a few days left. So I would say the season 2 finale was one of the most challenging. I actually have a better answer for challenging. The season 3 water fight in Derek's loft was by far the most that was an insane episode. I mean, we actually filled that entire set with water. It was like up to your ankles, and it was just one of the craziest things we ever shot. So I think that now that I look back, that was probably the most challenging. But I always, for some reason, I will never forget it was our last night of shooting the season 2 finale. Everybody was there. We had so many cast involved in that big fight scene, and we were just doing crazy things to keep ourselves awake. I mean, it was such a long night at the end of a long season. And I remember Daniel Sharman and Daniel, who played Isaac, we all started playing this game where you would sneak up behind somebody and like just give them like a little like slap on the back of the hamstring, so it just stings a little bit. And it was kind of to mess with people, but it was also just to keep ourselves awake. So we're kind of like, you were dreading that you would be the next person, but also when it happened, it woke you up. So it was a very weird game that we decided to play. But you know, you do crazy things to keep yourselves going and involved in long like that.
Yeah, if you can't tell from the posters just how much I love the show.
I see it. But did you have a favorite season?
I don't know. I loved them all, but I really loved like the first couple when there was a little more humor in it before it was like super dark.
Yeah.
But I liked them all.
Yeah. No, good. Well, good. I'm very glad you enjoyed
it. So you reprised the role in the recent Teen Wolf the movie. What was it difficult to get back into character after so many years away from Derek?
You know what? It really wasn't. It was so funny because especially when you see a bunch of the old crew members that used to be there. We had so many people come back to the movie, which was so great, like cast and crew. So you kind of see these people that you remember having so many years with together, and in Atlanta, and then we shot in LA. It all kind of comes flooding back in this way that you can kind of anticipate, but not entirely until you're there. So to be back on the set, back in the clothes, and just kind of being with the people that you spent so many years with making this thing in the first place, it was a really cool feeling. I don't think I've ever gone back to something like that before, where you'd spent that much time with it and then had a really good amount of time away from it. Going back in, it was just it was so much fun. I always say this, like, a lot of my best friends are from that show, and I really mean that. Like, we all, so many of us stay in touch very often and see each other very often, even after the show was over. That to go back, the different thing was feeling like these were your friends that you got from work the first time, and then going back and being like, I'm going to work with all of my already existing friends. It was is a little bit different, but it was really special. We really do all get along so well, and so it was kind of like a family reunion.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So you currently star as Clark Kent in the CW show Superman and Lois. What's your favorite part about working on a superhero show?
Selfishly, my favorite part of it is the cast and crew that we have. We have such an amazing group of people up there. I enjoy my time away from work, but I miss everybody up there a lot because we have such a special group. The crew is so incredibly hardworking and just amazingly kind people, and the cast as well. We just have such a special group that really gets along so well, and we enjoy working together. We enjoy getting together off of set, especially now that we can do that. Our first season was during COVID, and we had a lot of very strict, you go to work and then you go sit at home and you don't talk to anybody, you don't see anybody. And so now these last 2 seasons, we've been able to actually get together and have dinners and, spend some time off of set. It's just a really special set. And so I really enjoy that. That's a huge priority for me. I always want the show to be very good, but equally as important to me is that the set is a special place for people to come and work because they spend a lot of time there. I think for the first season, 15 episodes came out and they're about 40 minutes each. So, it's a couple hours worth of footage, but it took us 10 months to film it. And so, as much as it's very important that the show is successful, I really want the set to be a special place. And we've done that there. So that's really nice. But I would say the other part that I really love about it being on a superhero show is these characters mean so much to so many people. Superman's been around for 85 years now. It's been a long time. So for people to still be invested in these characters, there's obviously something very important about them to people. And I love being able to be just a small part of carrying that on until the next people come in and take over and keep it going. It's a really special thing. And, one of my favorite stories, and it's happened multiple times now, but the first time I remember, Melissa Benoist and I were doing a scene in downtown Vancouver, and we were shooting in this park. And I believe there was like a field trip going on, but some teachers had a bunch of students with them, and they're probably 7, 8 years old. And they're all walking down the street, and they stopped to watch us film a few scenes. And we had a break, and Melissa and I went over in our costumes to go talk to these little kids, and just to see them get so excited and light up, and to be able to just kind of like make their day. That was a really cool and special feeling that I hadn't had before.
So you've been in so many different projects and have done so many different genres, from supernatural to comedies and dramas. Of all the projects and characters you've played, is there one that you related to the most?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, it's funny. I feel like there's elements of each person that you kind of grab onto, and so you try to find ways where you always feel a lot of yourself in them, or try to make it personal so you can understand, find empathy with the characters. I probably do feel like I probably have the most in common with Clark Kent. I would say I probably have the most in common with Clark. Yeah, I seem to understand him a lot. There's a lot of me in Clark. There's a lot of my dad in Clark. So I would say probably Clark's the one I feel the closest to. But like I said, there's so many things. There's things about Derek that I really kind of felt connected to, especially any characters I played who played baseball. I very much felt connected to them. So yeah, I think it's one of the challenges is to find, even people who are like on the page when you first read it, you don't necessarily see yourself. It's important to find ways to understand that person. And so you do try to find it, even if it's like something that's a little bit inside you, just a way of magnifying that and really kind of grabbing onto it. So it's one of the things I really enjoy about what we get to do, is trying to, put yourself in somebody else's shoes and understand them in a really meaningful way.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Do you have a ritual that you do to get into character before filming a scene?
I wouldn't say that I necessarily have rituals, mainly because in my days as a baseball player, I had a lot of them. We have very, very superstitious people, baseball players. I I used to have a certain thing of how many times I would tap my left foot and then my right foot and then my left foot and then my right foot to get ready for a ground ball. I used to do a lot of that. I had a routine getting into the batter's box. So those days of like being that ritualistic are behind me. I've tried to tried to leave them in the past. But on certain days, there's definitely, certain kinds of scenes that take a different kind of preparation. There are some scenes where I'll have my headphones with me and I'll either be listening to very specific music, or I'll be watching a scene from something that I've kind of like planned ahead of time to watch before we go into this, just for certain kind of headspace things. So I would say if there's any ritual that I do more than anything, it's definitely listening to some music before very specific scenes. It's really helpful. Music's a very, very powerful tool. I love it in general, but especially at work, it can be very helpful sometimes.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So is there a line from a movie, song, book, or show that has always stuck with you?
That's such a good question.
Yep.
That's such a good question.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to narrow it down. Man. There's a it's funny. There's a lecture series by Alan Watts that my good buddy Ian Bowen from Teen Wolf, Uncle Peter, recommended to me, and it was a really fantastic thing to listen to, and I really enjoyed it. But there was one funny thing, and it won't tell the whole story, but the quote is, "Aha, there you are." And it was this really great story about this guy who was trying to discover himself, and he was speaking to a monk, and he was going through all these things, and the monk asked him, who are you? And he gave him all these different descriptions and all these different labels and things. And then he's like, no. And they continued to talk. And at one point during the conversation, something was said, and the gentleman laughed. And the monk said, aha, there you are. And I just thought it was a really interesting thing to realize that, I went through, when I stopped playing baseball, it took me a really long time. I stopped playing baseball when I was 21. And I remember the day that I realized that baseball was just something that I did, and it wasn't who I was. And it wasn't until I was like 29. I was at my alumni game at UC Irvine, and something happened in the game that I kind of laughed at that, years ago, I never would have been able to laugh at. But in that moment, I realized that this was a game, and sports are very important to me. I think there's so many amazing things about life that we learn from sports. There's so many communities that are touched by sports. So I do think sports are incredibly significant. And when people do kind of get to understand the impact they have, it really is a special thing. And it's not just about who wins and who loses. That's just part of the game. But there's so many things about life that come from that I really find important and special. But for me in that moment, it was the realization of, for me, this game and how I play it, or, what happened in a certain thing doesn't define me, and it's not anything like that. It's just something that I did. And so that story of, aha, there you are, it was just this really amazing reminder of, it's hard to describe who you are. You kind of just, you are. And people experience that by being with you and being around you and getting to know you long enough that there's an essence of who you are. And that's really what it is. And then, all these other things that we try to figure out and put on it and place on it. I think it gets away from the core of what we really are. So that line for me, for whatever reason, it's so simple, but it reminds me of so many things every time I think about it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So is there a show that you're currently obsessed with?
So my current obsession is a little bit of my past obsession as well. The shows I've been obsessed with of recent years was Game of Thrones. I was a massive Game of Thrones fan. And I didn't think I would find anything to kind of replace that until I found Peaky Blinders. When I found Peaky Blinders, that was my new obsession, and it's been my obsession. I absolutely love that show. I got to the end of it without it being spoiled, which was amazing. I was so happy about that. But yeah, I would say Peaky Blinders has been my most recent TV obsession. And then yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've been watching Grimm lately.
Nice.
Um,
Very
so
nice.
aside from Superman and Lois, I've been binge watching Grimm. So
Oh, very cool. How are you liking it?
I really like it. There are some episodes that, like, I can never watch the show when it's dark outside because there are some episodes I'm like, okay, this was really creepy, but
Yeah. I feel you on that. There's definitely certain movies I don't watch. I don't watch anymore.
yeah. Yeah, so once it starts to like get dark outside, even if I'm really into the even if I want to watch another episode, I'm like, I know I have to stop because unless if I don't stop, I'm gonna have nightmares.
It's a wise choice. It's a very wise choice. You know yourself. That's very important.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I learned that after there were a few episodes of Teen Wolf that I would watch at night, and then like they were like really dark, and so then I wouldn't really sleep. So
Yeah.
then I realized that I can't do that.
We were definitely responsible for some nightmares. I'm very sure of that. Yeah.
Yeah. uh, so if somebody was narrating your life, who would you want it to be and why?
Oh wow. Um, Very good question. I feel like, I would say my parents, but I feel like they're biased. So I feel like I'd want somebody that's a little bit more objective because I wouldn't mind a little bit of criticism along the way. Um, very, very loving and supportive parents. I'm very grateful for them, but I feel like maybe a little less bias.
Yeah.
Man, I would say I would say either like an old baseball teammate or someone that I worked with really closely for a long time. So somebody from the Teen Wolf set that I've stayed really close to. Someone like Ian or JR or my buddy Sinqual Walls. I feel like that would be really cool. It's funny because there's definitely there's different answers for this as far as like how personal you want it to be. If it was impersonal and if they didn't have to be alive today, I would say Alan Watts because that lecture series for me was just such a impactful thing for me to listen to. And he has an incredible speaking voice. It's very fun. So I would say if it was impersonal, I'd probably go with someone like Alan Watts. But if it was personal, definitely someone who I've been through a lot with, spent a lot of time, either just going through life with or working very closely with. You get to know people in a very specific way that way. So probably someone like that.
Oh,
That's a
cool.
really great question. I've never been asked that question before.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That makes me really happy to hear that you've never been asked that. So
Never. Never. That's a very original question. I love that.
Thank you. Um, so what do you do to motivate? Sorry, I can't speak.
Oh, that's okay.
Um,
We all have those days.
yeah. Um, so what do you do to motivate yourself when you are having a particularly challenging day?
Um, I like to remind myself that it's that I'm not the only one. And my brother always had a really great thing that he told me. He's like, it's fine if people are more talented than you, but don't let anyone outwork you. And so I feel like in moments like that, if I feel like it's a challenging day or if I feel like I'm struggling for motivation, I think it's also reminding myself that because I'm not the only one in the situation like that, there are other people that are pushing through it. And so I really don't have an excuse not to. Because I think it becomes a choice of whether or not you allow the challenge to overwhelm you, or if you decide that, no matter how challenging it is, you're going to have to go through it one way or another. So you either go through it by ignoring it, which usually makes it worse, or you go through it by facing it head on, which might be painful, it might be difficult, but I do find that coming out the other side of that is always a much more rewarding. You grow through those things, and so I do find that as much as we don't like things that hurt, things that make things more difficult at the moment, they usually do have a great reward on the other side.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my final question for you is, who do you consider to be a real life superhero and why?
I would say my family. I think just because you get to, especially when you get to know everybody so well, and you know the goods and the bads and the wins and the losses and the struggles that they all go through. I really do have a close family, and we get to see each other, not as much these days as we used to, but we do still see each other a lot, and we're very close. And I love each and every one of them so much, and I know what they do on a day-to-day basis, and in particular my parents. I think I grew up assuming that everyone had the same kind of parents, and as I've grown up, I've realized that's not always the case. And I'm really grateful for all the things that my parents did and continue to do for me and my 3 siblings, and now their grandkids, my nieces and nephews. Just the things that they've done to give us what we have, and to do it selflessly, and to make it look easy when I know it wasn't. Especially like as you get older and you start to imagine yourself in those same situations, you go, wow, that's a lot. It's a lot of work. And so I think for them to do it as gracefully as they did was pretty amazing. And on top of that, my dad is my dad's an ER doctor, so it's kind of also an easy answer for me, because he does that for us at home, and then he goes to work and saves people. I've been on the phone with him before where he's like, oh, I gotta go, we have a code blue, and he comes back and calls me a few minutes later. He's like, we got him back. I'm like, oh my God, you just brought back somebody from the dead. That's incredible. It's amazing. So I would say my family and my parents.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for calling in. That was my final question, and I've just
thank you.
Much fun talking with you. So thank you.
You as well, Maya, and I'd like to throw you in that category as well. I think it's so amazing what you do, and I love your energy. I love the attitude you have here. It's just like, it's so much fun, and I really do. I admire you so much, and you're such an inspiration. It's such a massive pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful interview, Maya. Thank you, Tyler, for joining us here at Children's Hospital Colorado.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And Maya will definitely be sure to keep us updated on what projects you're in next.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you guys so much. It was an absolute pleasure. I had such a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
All right,
Yes,
y'all.
thank
Have a great day.
you.